Welcome aboard TED Talks Cruises, the podcast where wanderlust meets wisdom. Join our two hosts on a cruising adventure full of laughter, learning, and luxury. Ken Conan is a cruise rookie. He's wide-eyed, full of questions, and maybe still figuring out which end is aft. Ted Blank is a seasoned cruise expert who's been there, done that, and he even has a preferred deck chair. Each week, Ted and Ken dive into the world of cruising, from picking the right itinerary to insider tips, their personal insights, and behind-the-scenes secrets. Whether you're planning your first cruise or you're a platinum tier cruiser looking for fresh perspectives, TED Talks Cruises brings relatable stories, helpful advice, and plenty of good vibes. So get ready to laugh, learn, and set sail. No passport required.
Hey, it's Ken Conan. Welcome out to TED Talks Cruises. My name's Ken Conan. I am the rookie, and we have our travel expert with us today, Mr. Ted Blank.
And I'm Ted Blank. I am the travel expert, the cruise expert on our show, and I've been on over 50 cruises myself. But, more importantly, I've probably planned over 1,000 cruises for my clients. And so not only have I been there, done that, but I spend a lot of time planning cruises. It's what I do every day from 8 to 5. And so
fun.
Sometimes folks will say, have you been there? And I might say, well, no, I haven't, but I've had a lot of clients go there and you can learn a lot through that process as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sure when clients get back, I would guess it's not like an official debrief, but I bet you're curious, how'd it go? What happened? What was
we send
great?
everybody a survey.
You do?
And we do
Okay.
that for a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, we want to know, make sure we actually check in with them when they're traveling.
Yeah,
as
nice.
well. But, we send them a survey when they get back because we want to know how the trip went. We want to know how the cruise line or the tour operator or the hotels did as well. And those, reviews, those firsthand real reviews from our clients, those inform how we plan things.
I like that.
What companies we want to work with.
I like that.
Because, you can watch all the ads in the world and hear all the sales presentations in the world.
For sure.
If the juice isn't worth the squeeze, it's not going to happen. So that's how we ensure that. We ask our clients and we really value their feedback.
That's awesome. I would guess there's probably some that do an excellent job and it looks good on paper and looks good on the website and you do it and you're like, oh, so you're going to miss. And there's probably others that are the opposite where you're like, yeah, it looks pretty good and all the marketing stuff, but gosh, when I went, whoop, it was a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, two things. First of all, how do they handle problems? Because things happen. Weather, we've talked about river cruises and high water, low water. How do they handle those? How do they handle those disruptions?
Right.
And then the second thing is, are they consistent? Because you might go and have a great time, and I might go on a different ship or to a different destination and have a terrible experience. And so it's really important that they're consistent in what they deliver. You don't have to promise luxury. If you promise a 3-star experience, deliver a 3-star experience. Don't give us a 1-star experience. But by the same token, if you're promising a 5-star experience, consistently deliver that 5-star experience. So all those thousands of folks who have been on cruises, we have the benefit of their experiences and their expertise as well.
Yeah.
And we know them. They're real people. They're not bots filling out rating forms on the internet. Because, Ken, this may come as a great shock to you, and people are probably watching this on the internet, but not everything on the internet is true.
What?
Doesn't that shock you? And I think it's kind of funny because you look at some of these AI things and they're learning everything based on information that's not true.
That's crazy.
And it's just creating worse, information overload. And I can't even imagine if I didn't work in this industry and I wanted to take some of the trips that I've had a chance to go on, what would I do? Where would I turn to get that information? I'd probably start looking on the internet, and boy, you'd have a lot of buyer beware out there.
Right.
So,
well,
that's why we're still in business as travel advisors.
Yeah, I think that's a huge value add that you bring to the equation, you and your team bring to the equation, is you can add so much context and experience and, feedback from all of your feedback loops that you have and just really amaze your clients. So that's awesome stuff. Tell us about today's. You came in with an idea. And
we were doing a little show. We were doing a little show prep, and I said to myself very modestly, I've done a lot of talking here. But, and I've talked about trips I've taken, and we've talked about a few trips you've taken, but I thought it would be great for our listeners and our viewers to hear some things that are on your bucket list.
Yeah.
Places that, you've dreamed about going as a travel rookie.
Yeah.
And then maybe over the next couple of years, we'll make it come true. And
Check
we
some
can
of those.
have you come back and report about it. But I thought we'd let you share what's on your bucket list.
Awesome. Well, so this I didn't know that this was going to be our show topic today, but it's funny when you have a true bucket list, they just come to you where you're like,
They do.
Yep. And so I just thought of another one, and I think this is one that you've been on. And do you want me to just give you a couple of them real quick, or do you want to go onesie, twosie?
Why don't you give me one? We'll start there. We'll kind of talk about what other people who maybe have that on their bucket list should be thinking about as they think about that destination or that trip.
So this is one, and I think you might have gone on this one. Is it Eastern Asia, Vietnam, that area?
Yes.
That's something that, and I think it was maybe you that was telling me a little bit about it, but I was just like, that is so intriguing to me. Just an area I've always thought, what is it like,
Yeah. So you're probably talking about sort of Vietnam,
yes,
Cambodia, Southeast Asia.
Yes.
There's China, there's Japan, other parts of Asia as well. But I did have the chance to do a cruise on the Mekong River in Vietnam and Cambodia. And that is, one of my probably top 3 life-changing trips that I took.
For real.
It was really, really an amazing experience. And it's so foreign.
Yeah.
You can go to Europe and kind of feels like home. You can even go to South America, Brazil, places like that, and it feels like home. But Southeast Asia doesn't feel like home. You're not in Kansas anymore, Ken.
Right.
And so it is a very different, very exotic place in some ways. Obviously, Vietnam, Cambodia are places that America has some history as well. So there are pieces of that there. If it wasn't for that, it would be still a fascinating, interesting place to go. Ancient civilizations there. One of the places that if you do a cruise on the Mekong River, you'll end up going to is the temples of Angkor Wat. And those are in northern Cambodia.
Okay.
And they're as old as the pyramids. No, I should rephrase it. They're not as old as the pyramids. They're as old as like Westminster Abbey, the Tower of London.
Okay.
They were built in about the 1100s, but they're as impressive as the pyramids.
Wow.
And so a lot of folks will actually go to Egypt first and come to the Mekong second.
Huh.
But it's a beautiful place. The Mekong River is the heart of this civilization.
Okay.
And so it's a great place to take a river cruise.
Wow.
And people might be really surprised to know, but a lot of the river cruise companies that we've talked about when we've talked about river cruises in Europe also operate on the Mekong River.
Really?
Yeah, now it's different, but it's the same.
Yeah.
And so it is a really, really neat experience.
Interesting.
You probably need about 2 weeks to do it.
For sure. Yeah, what's the travel time from, we're coming out of MSP personally. What's it look like? Is it like
so fly from Minneapolis to Seoul in South Korea is about 14 hours.
Wow.
And then it's another couple hours to get to either Saigon, which is now called Ho Chi Minh City, or Hanoi, which is in North Vietnam. And just like all river cruises, you can go in either direction.
Yeah.
But the trip generally takes about 14 days.
Wow.
And you'll spend 7 nights on the ship. You'll spend a couple nights in Ho Chi Minh City, which is Saigon. Very interesting city. Beautiful city, a lot of French influences there.
Interesting.
If you were alive during the Vietnam War, there are some buildings you will absolutely recognize in Saigon. Then the Mekong River starts, it actually ends in Vietnam.
Okay.
And it runs south from actually the Himalayas, which I didn't realize, but it gets bigger in Cambodia where it becomes a navigable river. So part of it is also to visit Cambodia.
Wow.
A very different place than Vietnam.
Wow.
Much poorer country, real tragic history in the 20th century, but a beautiful country.
Yeah.
The people have somehow come back from a genocide and continue to live and continue to exist. So it's a beautiful, fascinating country.
Amazing.
So much history there. The scenery is unbelievable. It's really hot there.
I bet.
So summertime, June, July, August, the rivers actually are shut down for cruises because it's too hot and it's too wet.
Wow.
So the season is like September through mid-April.
Okay.
And I was there in January.
Okay.
Which is a great time to go because it's about as cool as it gets, which means it's 90 degrees and humid in the shade. So, and another consideration is that, the infrastructure there is not as advanced as it would be for tourism elsewhere. And so you'll do more walking. The distances are longer. The port facilities are a little more primitive.
Sure.
But, we had a chance to meet people, talk to them, visit schools, visit, not farmers market's not the right word. It's the farm itself with a stand in front of it. And so you get a chance to meet people and talk to people. And it just absolutely fascinating. I would go back there in a heartbeat.
So quick question on the ships that navigate those waters. Is it similar to what we would see on the Rhine or the Danube, where it's a multi-layer kind of long ship, or is it a little bit more?
They have a little different. They're very similar.
Okay.
Little different look to them. Some of them they're usually a little bit smaller.
Okay.
There's one that I think is a little bit bigger. They tend to not use much carpeting in Vietnam because it's so hot.
Got it.
So everything is like mahogany furnished. But beautiful staterooms with nice balconies. The ships have pools. And the one thing that's actually a little more challenging, in Europe it's easy to get good wine. Not so easy in Vietnam. So the local spirits and beer are included, but wine is only included with dinner. It's kind of a gourmet item in Southeast Asia.
So tell me, you and I we're kind of foodies, right? Tell me about like what over there. What was it that you were like?
It was so good. I
really?
mean, so many choices, and Vietnamese food is a little bit similar to Chinese food, and then it kind of looks the same. They have the world's best coffee over there.
Never would have guessed that.
Do not have 2 cups. Or you'll be shaken. You'll be an earthquake in your head. And because it's so hot there, a lot of times they will make the coffee cold, and they mix it with sweetened condensed milk and sugar. It's so good.
Wow!
It's like a Twinkie in a Twinkie.
I was going to say, if you're watching your calories,
not a place to do that. But the good news is you'll sweat it out in 5 minutes. So
right.
It's good. But yeah, the coffee there is excellent. The food is excellent as well. A lot of those stews that we call, I think we pronounce it pho. PHO.
Yeah.
So a lot of stews like that. And the nice thing on the river cruise ships, they're going to stay in first class hotels. And so those hotels will have American style food and Asian style food.
Sure.
And on board the ship, they actually have American style entrees and Asian style entrees.
Okay.
And the ship we were on, one of the neat things they did is when you came into the dining room, they actually had samples of each dish prepared.
No.
So
what
you
a
could
brilliant
actually see
idea.
what it was.
Yeah.
And the maitre d' was there, and he would explain, okay, well, this is chicken, and this is this, and this is this. And so it helped people who were, apprehensive about what might be on their plate.
That would be me. Yep.
Yeah. Now, one of the things we did is we did do a food market tour with a guide.
Wow.
And I'm so glad we had a guide with us.
Yeah.
Because you really wouldn't know what was necessarily safe to eat there or not. And farm to table has a new meaning there because most houses don't have electricity.
Oh, my.
And most houses don't have refrigerators. So how do you keep your food fresh?
Sure.
Well, you keep it alive until the very last possible minute. And so you go to the market and you want to fish, and here you go, because you're going to take it right home and cook it.
Wow.
So, so it's a very different environment. And so having that guide with us and helping us, okay, you can try this. This is, we know this vendor there.
Yeah.
We've kind of cleared them. One of the things that we had was, I would almost call it like a rotisserie chicken. They had a huge outdoor fire.
Okay.
And they had a whole bunch of chickens on skewers, and they would rotate them. It wasn't rotisserie seasoning. It was actually kind of like very Asian flavored seasoning, like what is it, allspice, or is that what they call that, allspice?
Yeah.
Like kind of anise based. And so it was really, really good. Just juicy, delicious.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and you get a whole chicken for like 75 cents.
Oh, my gosh.
That's crazy. Yeah, so the prices of everything in Asia are very, very low.
Right.
Yeah, but neat trip.
How fun.
Highly recommended.
Okay.
And do it when you're younger. You know, if your joints act up and stuff like that, there's a lot of outdoor hot walking activity. So
it's a good tip.
Place to space. But yeah, I would approve of keeping that one on your list. I think that'd be a good one to check off.
All right. So we're going to keep that one on the list. Let me go to my next one. I'm going to take us from hot to maybe a little bit cooler on this next one.
All right.
We're going to go up to, and you're going to have to help me with this because I've just heard about it from Shannon. It sounds like a smaller ship, kind of exploratory Alaska, where you hit maybe smaller ports. Tell me about that. I don't even know the words.
Now you have been to Alaska before.
I have, and I loved it.
Yeah, and you were there on a regular full-sized cruise ship.
We were.
And so you had a chance to see some of the glaciers from the big ship. And you probably went to Ketchikan and Skagway and Juneau,
for sure. Yep.
The major ports. And so that's a really neat way to tour Alaska. But if you want to really get that in-depth, kind of an expedition style cruise, Alaska's a great place to do that. And there are a couple different cruise lines that operate American-built, American-owned, American-flagged,
Okay.
American-crewed ships within Alaska, primarily in the area of kind of southeast Alaska and the Inside Passage.
Okay.
So instead of flying up to Anchorage and cruising down to Vancouver, instead you'll fly to Juneau, and you might take a round-trip cruise from Juneau.
Wow.
Or you might even fly to Sitka, which is a small town, and cruise from Sitka to Juneau.
Fun.
And these ships, they carry anywhere between maybe 40 and 130, 140 passengers.
Wow.
And they're going to focus on two things. One of which is those small towns, those little tiny places that the real big cruise ships can't go to.
Yeah.
And the other one is nature.
Fun.
And so, for example, instead of going to Glacier Bay like you did for a couple hours,
Yep.
you sailed in, saw the glacier, great experience,
Beep, beep.
sailed out.
Yep.
They might spend 2 or 3 days within Glacier Bay
Wow.
National Park.
Wow.
And they're going to see the glaciers for sure.
Yeah.
But they're also going to stop, and they're just going to nudge up to the bank, put a gangplank down, and you're going to go for a hike.
No way.
Up into the wildlife. You can go kayaking off the ships.
Oh
yeah,
my.
I mean, just if you really want that,
Wow.
kind of like roughing it in the
Yeah.
national park without roughing it.
Yeah.
These are not fishing boats.
Right.
They're very nice ships. They've got excellent cuisine. The best naturalists, best expedition leaders travel with you.
Yeah.
So when you're going for a hike, you've got somebody who's a biologist. leading it,
Amazing.
Park rangers,
Yeah.
things like that. So they're a cool experience.
Wow.
There's another company called American Cruise Lines,
Okay.
which they're a little more, I would say, sedate. So their ships are a little bigger, about 125, 150 passengers.
Okay.
They're going to visit the small ports, but they're not going to have that expedition component
Okay.
to them. So if you want to see Alaska, get off the beaten path, but kayaking or hiking through the forest isn't your thing,
Yeah.
there's an option for that as well.
Option one.
Option 1, option 2.
One
And-
for me all day long. Not a question.
Yeah, they are fantastic. When we have folks who take them, they come back with life-changing
Really.
experiences.
Wow.
I mean, think about you wake up in the morning and you're having your cup of coffee, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by a pot of whales,
Right.
and you get splashed. I mean, it's really, really in-depth.
Wow.
You're all by yourself, you and nature and 40 other people,
Yeah.
and that's about it. So they're a
Amazing.
fantastic experience. Small ships,
Amazing.
so they fill up early.
Yeah.
So when they, when these come up for sale, when they go on sale,
Yep.
we want to get folks booked on them as soon as possible.
That's awesome.
And they're going to have a choice of accommodations. You're not going to have the big staterooms at the balcony.
Sure.
No spa, no casino,
Right.
nothing like that. The staterooms are pleasant but small.
Yep.
And some of them are kind of pokey.
Okay.
So we want to make sure we get folks the selection
Yeah.
that they want. And then the neat thing is those ships go down to the Sea of Cortez in the winter.
What?
Yep, down in Mexico, and they actually follow the
Wow.
whales. And so you can do the same kind of expedition cruises in Baja California in the winter. So
So here's the
kind
problem.
of a neat opportunity.
We just added another thing to
I
my
know,
bucket list.
Two things.
Two
Now we're up to
things.
3. And
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's
but
right.
I would say for folks who've been to Alaska before,
Yeah.
or folks who haven't gone to Alaska because they just really don't want to take a big ship cruise, this is exactly for you. The Alaska Expedition Cruise.
So fun.
Great option.
So it sounds like you're saying this one you need to pay particular attention to getting signed up and getting on board earlier, making it happen. How far out is that? Is that a year or two?
Yeah, so they're going to
or
be,
more?
about a year or
Okay,
so.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would really encourage folks to think about is those ships don't spend the year in Alaska. Like I said,
Right.
they're going down to the Sea of Cortez, but they have to get to Alaska. And so along the way from, Seattle or Vancouver, you're going up through parts of British Columbia, parts of Alaska that you may be the only tourists who go to that little village for the
way.
whole year.
No way.
And so they're kind of what they might call a repositioning cruise.
Okay.
Some of those are just phenomenal.
Amazing.
Other thing, if you have a family
Yep.
and you have kids who like to learn, they like science, they like outdoor things.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
take them to a national park and they have a great time
Yeah.
there. This is perfect for families. Some of these are really, really well designed for families, and the kids, the teenagers, get to do a lot of really hands-on science, hands-on nature stuff.
Oh, how fun.
And that's something that you can't do on the big cruise ships.
Right.
And so these are a great option for those multi-generational families where you want the kids to get engaged and learn on the trip.
So
as well.
fun. So fun. I've never heard of a repositioning cruise. That sounds like a great time too. I mean,
Yeah, it
amazing.
depends. The ships have to, they spend the summer in Alaska, they spend the winter in the Caribbean. They have to get back and forth.
Right.
And so a lot of times when they're moving, in the changeover of seasons, there are some really interesting opportunities. And these small ships in particular, because you're going places nobody else can go.
I love that. All right. So we went hot. We went cold. We're going to go back to hot again.
Okay.
We're going to go.
We should tell everybody. I don't know what you're going to say next.
We're going into the desert area.
Oh, into the desert.
I think
okay.
it's the desert.
All right.
It's in Egypt.
Egypt. Oh, okay.
I just received, and I'm going to give a quick plug if you're okay with it, to Ama Waterways. They have an Egyptian cruise, and I will be very honest. I get a lot of mail and a lot of pamphlets and a lot of stuff around cruises and travel. And this one, I opened it up, and it's an amazing flyer.
Put it on the fridge.
Yeah, I
like,
think
honey.
this one might have moved up on the list here.
So when I was young, I once went to a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And the fortune I got was, you want to go to Egypt. Now, it wasn't that you will go to Egypt, but
Really?
you want to go to Egypt. So apparently that's on my bucket list too. But
All
no,
right.
it genuinely is. And I've unfortunately had a couple chances to go and it just hasn't worked out. But believe it or not, it is one of the more popular places this year for people to travel.
And is this like new?
You've always been able to take river cruises on the Nile. You've always been able to go, ever since King Tut. There was an Agatha Christie book, Death on the Nile, from the 1920s. So this isn't new, but it's become a big business now. And the cruise lines, they can't keep up with the demand for Egyptian cruises. So they're building a lot of new ships. And, when you look at a map of Egypt, you have the Nile River, and that's really where the civilization is. That's where the ruins are. That's where everything is built around the Nile. You don't have to go too far from the Nile to get to literal desert where there is nothing.
Right.
So the cradle of Egyptian civilization is along the Nile River. And so the cruise lines have put together, very much like they do in Vietnam, pre-cruise tours, a river cruise, and a post-cruise tour. Now, it used to be that a lot of people would go to Israel before they would go on the cruise, not so much. Now, Jordan is the number one place for a pre-cruise trip because you can go to the ruins at Petra.
Oh,
and
really?
Fascinating ruins, amazing ruins. They were in Indiana Jones. These are structures hewn out of solid rock.
Unreal.
An unreal place. You can camp in the desert. Actually, you can camp in like a glamping in the desert in a yurt, like an air-conditioned yurt. It's amazing what you can do there. And then Cairo. It has, the brand new, I think it's called the Grand Egyptian Museum. It's the old Egyptian museum on steroids.
Wow.
So it's kind of all the treasures of Egypt, King Tut's tomb, all of that is there for you to see. The pyramids at Giza, the Sphinx, Cairo itself, very interesting city. And then you'll fly south to the city of Luxor, where you'll join your river cruise. Okay. Because you're going to go through kind of the main cradle of old Egyptian civilization. And you'll see the temples there, like the temples at Karnak. If you want to, the cruise lines all offer an optional excursion to go to Abu Simbel. And Abu Simbel was a temple on the Nile River. And in the 1960s, they built a giant dam called the Nasser Dam, and it was going to flood the site of Abu Simbel. And so they actually disassembled it and moved it. And there's a very iconic cover of a Life magazine, remember Life magazine, of the removal of Abu Simbel to its new location.
Interesting.
So there's an excursion where you actually get on a little plane and fly to Abu Simbel and see it and go back. So it's a very, very neat experience. Beautiful, life-changing for a lot of people. And again, you have a river cruise. So you have all those conveniences of the river cruise. Like you don't have to pack and unpack.
Beautiful.
Great staff taking care of you. You're in a bubble of protection and guiding, and there's Egyptologists who travel with you, so you learn a lot as you go. And you're definitely going to come back with a life-changing experience.
Amazing. Yeah. This is probably one of Ken's goofy rookie questions, but are there hippos in the Nile? Are there big alligators that you get to see? Am I crazy? I know I'm out to lunch.
That's a good, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think there are hippos. I think the hippos, you have to go a little further south. But I do think there are alligators or crocodiles, whatever you'd have in the fresh water.
Sure.
Now, you're not going up to the Nile Delta near like Alexandria.
Sure.
And Alexandria is now becoming a place where more and more cruise ships are going.
Really?
So you can actually see that on a Mediterranean cruise, which is kind of neat. You know, it was off the radar screen for a while, but it's come back on the radar screen. So you wouldn't probably see that on your river cruise.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And some people like to go to Dubai before or after as well.
I would be in
see
for
that
Dubai.
Modern, yeah. It's a neat extension that you can do.
Yeah, that is really
But
interesting.
Jordan's really the one I highly recommend.
Really?
Petra, absolutely.
Yeah, I bet. That's so amazing.
Yeah. And year round, it's open year round. Temperature doesn't vary too much.
I suppose, yeah.
And Egypt is going to be hot and dry. And again, keep in mind, they didn't put the ruins next to the cruise ship dock.
Right.
And you're going to walk up a lot of stairs. So it's a destination where you're going to have to do a lot of walking.
Okay.
So again, I kind of tell people, as you're
call
thinking sort of strategically about your life and travel, do it sooner rather than later. Other things, maybe you can wait a little bit, but this is one to do when you're a little younger.
Okay. I love that. All right, I've got one more.
Okay.
I love this. This is the wild card round. This one may not be that big of a wild card because I know I've mentioned it to you many times, and we actually talked about something in this area recently on a podcast. It's the Med, and I have been to Spain. I've been I've been skirting around it, but I have not been in the Med. And when I think of the Med, I think of Greek islands. I think of like Italy and some of the cool things in and around there. I want like that. And I think you and I at one point were working through, and I forget what it was, but it was, and it might've been your radio show actually, where you were talking about like, this is like a highlight reel of the Med. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It was actually one of the cruises we talked about.
It was. Okay.
But that's the thing about the Mediterranean is the highlight reel is really long.
Yeah.
And when I talk about the Mediterranean with clients, when I talk about it with, Europe as well, I sometimes talk about kind of like the marquee ports.
Yes.
Those are your highlight reels. But then there's a whole world of smaller, off the beaten path places.
Yeah.
That if that's all you went to, maybe it wouldn't be as interesting. But when you intersperse those together and kind of mix and match them together, that's, I think, what makes a Mediterranean cruise so magical.
Love that.
And again, keep in mind that most of the civilization there sprang up along the water.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the most interesting historical sites, certainly the beautiful scenery, is going to be either accessible or visible from the water. So cruises are a great way to do it. And remember that floating hotel, to me, is priceless. And I think of some of the places I've gone that are, Ephesus, Venice, that are those top marquee ports, Dubrovnik in Croatia. But then some of the smaller ones I've been to, too, like Olympia in Greece, where the Olympics were held. Fascinating place. I had a chance to go to the ancient city of Sparta. And some ruins nearby there. There's nothing left in Sparta. It's all gone. But nearby, the ruins are just amazing. In a place called Mistras. So there's so much there.
Yeah.
And the diversity of cruising experiences available in the Mediterranean is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
You have the big cruise ships. You have the small luxury cruise ships. You have the little boutique ships. You have sailing ships, tall ships. You have sort of little yachts. I mean, there's just so many options out there. One of my favorite cruise lines, Regent Seven Seas, has a product now that they call immersive overnights. And so you might go for a 14-day cruise, but instead of going to 13 ports, you're only going to go to 6 because the ship is going to spend the night in port.
Oh, my.
And you're basically going to have 2 days to explore that from your floating hotel.
Yeah.
And as I look through and I look at itineraries, and I'm such a nerd that whenever new itineraries come out, I'm paging through. I'm like, well, that's a good one. But that's a good one.
Yeah.
And these immersive overnights, I think, are a fantastic option for folks, and especially maybe if you're not a cruiser.
Yeah.
And you're like, I really want to spend time on shore. This gives you the opportunity to do that, to do kind of an in-depth thing.
Yeah.
But you're still moving. You're going from place to place and seeing a couple different ports along the way. So I think those are some great options out there. Some other cruise lines, one's called Azamara. They do late night stays in most every port. The big cruise ships, you've got your floating resort.
Yeah.
So you get to have a day of, history and lessons and come back and relax by the pool or even go down the water slide.
Right.
So great for families as well. So yeah, the Mediterranean, you can't do it all at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing. And it's the kind of thing where you just kind of want to start here and take a piece off here and take a piece off here and a piece off here. And, after you've been back 4 or 5 times, you'll have kind of covered all the territory. And you'll start to realize what your favorite places are.
Yeah.
Too. Like one that just blew me away is Croatia. I think it's one of the most beautiful countries on earth. Very interesting. I've done in-depth, spent 10 days in Croatia. I've also visited a couple times on cruise ships. So you see a lot of different things, and it's kind of a hidden gem. But of course, Italy. I mean, how can you hold a candle to it? There's so much to see. Amazing. You can't possibly run out. So the Mediterranean is just such a cradle of civilization. I kind of get a little goosebump when I think about some of the places I've been. And so for people who are thinking, hey, I maybe want to dip my toes in luxury cruising or small ship cruising, want to go to the Mediterranean, let's talk, because there are so many different options out there. There is one that's right for you.
I'll tell you, the one you were going through ships that tour in that area, and it seems like almost all the styles you can even think
Pretty
of,
much
right?
Everything, yeah.
And the one that resonated when you said tall sailing ship.
Oh, yeah, the tall ships.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I think that might be honing in on my bucket list.
Actually, we are going to be hosting a group next September. So in September of 2026. In the Greek Isles.
How do I get on that list?
I'll give you a flyer. I've got one upstairs. But, tall ships are sailing ships.
Yeah.
Right? And so back in the day, that's an expression I use a lot, back in the day, because I don't remember the exact time. Back in the day.
Yeah.
These ships were the ships that were the only way to get around. Well, then we invented steam engines and diesel engines, and now ships are mostly powered. But the tall ships still exist. And there are about 6 or 7 that are full-blown, kind of historic reproduction tall ships that sail all over the Mediterranean. And there are a couple brand new ones as well. So they're sort of a yacht-style cruise, but they're built with sails. So they kind of add to the experience. The biggest one probably carries about 250 passengers. Wow. So they're very small. Yeah. And you're going to go, again, see some of those marquee ports and some of those off-the-beaten-path ports. So the particular one we're doing, it's going to be a 7-day cruise, 4 nights in Greece beforehand. So we're going to see Athens. We're going to see part of northern Greece, where the ruins of Delphi and Meteora are, where all those monasteries are that are up on top of the hill. And then we got on a ship, and we're going to go visit a couple ports in Turkey. One of them is actually a river. It's not even a port, it's a river. And so you can get off the ship. They have water sports. So they have kayaks and water skiing and stuff like that you can do right off the beach. So it's a really cool place to do that. Then we're going to go to Rhodes, one of the neatest islands in Greece, Santorini, where the volcano was. And then we're going to visit a tiny little island called Hydra. The Greeks would pronounce it Hydra, but we pronounce it Hydra. Yeah. And the big cruise ships can't fit there. The harbor is tiny. And so we'll probably be the only cruise ship there. Wow. And you get kind of a very different sort of authentic Greek feel there than you would get in some of the more touristed ports. And so those ships go all over the Mediterranean.
How cool.
So neat option, and absolutely one to put on the bucket list.
Love that. And if I didn't even mean, this was a total accident bringing this up, and it's a group that you're doing. Yeah. If people are interested in that group, and you said it's 2026 in the fall?
2026, September 2026.
September. Awesome.
Yeah. Just drop us a line, drop a comment in the comments below, and we'll get back to you. Or you can go to probably the easiest is just shoot me an email. Yeah. And we can give you the information.
How fun.
But yeah, I think we've unfortunately added to your bucket list.
I think so. See, this is what happens when you and I talk, my friend. The bucket list just goes, one more. I think we added 2 today at least.
Well, hopefully you got a little bit of insight into what they are and what it can look like. And, no bad choices here for you.
Yeah.
They're all good choices. I would endorse them all.
I love it. Well, we're at time. Right. Always great talking as usual. Give us a quick skinny. I should say subscribe. There's the buttons down there. Hit both those. Like and subscribe to us. And then if they want to reach out directly to you and your team, what's the best way?
Yeah, visit tedblanktravel.com. There's a great little contact us form there. And if you're interested in that group trip, we can send you the details on that as well. Or you can give us a call at area code 651-964-8245. And we also have a mailing list. Every week we send out kind of a cruise of the week where we have a little bit of a special value for folks and try to highlight some of the unique cruises that we talk about on our TED Talks Cruises podcast as well. So just drop us a note, and we're happy to put you on the mailing list for that as well.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ted, for talking cruises today. Great to catch up again this week. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.